Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Valuco, and welcome back to Personal Pans, conversations about belief, transformation, and all the weird and wonderful things that we experience. Today's guests are Irene Glasse and Caine Dreamwalker, and let me tell you, what an episode to come back on. I have taken a break due to COVID. It finally caught me, 2.5 years of me running from this thing, and it finally caught me, and I don't know where. I wear N95s everywhere. I think it was public transportation. I don't know. But I took a lot of time off to be as gentle with myself as possible for 3 weeks until I felt human again. And like, what a delight to revisit this episode. It's so funny. It comes in hot because Irene joined the Zoom before Caine did. And I think within a minute of talking to her, I brought up trauma, and then we were just firing on all cylinders immediately. Caine showed up, and then we had a rambunctious, I would say, conversation about witchcraft and trauma and shadow work. And I just adore the two of them so much. And it was really revitalizing to watch this episode again, as I have taken these 3 weeks of illness to think about, what do I need to heal? What do I need to do to take better care of myself? How can I be gentle with myself? And I am going to credit. So I read their book about the Blackfeather Mystery School before talking with them. And even when I was sick, I was still able to do the Blackfeather self-blessing. And let me tell you, just a little bit of daily practice really is transformative. And a nice way to like affirm and take care of yourself. Especially when you're ill, but also just in general. So I've talked a lot. I clearly am very excited. It's good to be back. And here's the episode.
Yep, we're on toxic masculinity and predation and racism. We went in hard
Fuck yeah,
immediately. I do love that.
Let's do it.
You meet someone and you're like, oh, we're friends now already, so we can just have this conversation, you know.
I suck at small talk anyway. Like, I'm much better at this.
I always feel like, because I'm like, oh, let's just talk about trauma, because I think that informs all of human existence anyway, and is like behind all of the terrible politics we see right now. It's like, hey, if we talked about it, maybe people wouldn't be doing terrible things all the time or feel empowered to do terrible things all the time. So like,
indeed,
bring it all out of the dark, baby. Exactly. I got a Scorpio moon. I can do that all day.
Let's do this.
Yes.
I know. I at one point in time, for a very brief hiccup of time, I lived in a luxury townhome community, and it was basically like the Stepford Wives zone. And if anything, that experience taught me that if you do not allow your oddness and your shadows to be something that you are conscious of, and you bring them out in front of you, they slowly become cancerous and do weird shit from the inside.
Oh yeah, those people freak the fuck out.
Oh my God, Caine, it was so weird. Like, I moved after a year. I was like, y'all, I am pagan, heavily tattooed, and in a metal band, and I cannot hang with you motherfuckers. I can't do it. Like,
of course. Oh my God. I know. I mean, that I think about like the couple of years I spent in Catholic school, and 2 years actually spent in an Opus Dei Catholic school. Again, I am not Catholic. It was not baptized, much to the chagrin of my grandmother. And like, you know, they talked about being open and all of that. Sure. But like, you had, you know, these like girls, and they just like smiles on their faces all the time and going to church every day. And I just remember once there was this one girl, and I just happened to catch sight of her, and she was just like, and then as soon as someone was like, oh, hey, just, And I'm like,
Yes.
oh,
Yes. That. They're
no.
yeah. They're
That's
either
scary.
seething on the inside or kind of dead inside in a
Yeah.
terrifying way.
The mask slipped.
Oh yeah. And then you just see this chaos void of like shame and pain. And it's just like, you know, there's other ways to be, right? That is one of many options.
You can choose so many different other
There's other
ways to
stuff.
be.
Like, if in fact, if you deal with your shit, that screaming void, that gets better. Like the second level of our school has like 2 shadow work modules where it's like,
Oh.
please, for the love of fuck, get some help. Like, let's deal with this now.
Thank you. Oh my, I'm gonna have to send Enfys like a bottle of wine or something for connecting us, because holy shit, I'm already like so amped up and want to say a million different things.
No, both Caine and I are benefits of significant amounts of therapy and personal work. Both of us have backgrounds that actually include a lot of toxic masculinity. I'm a former Marine. Caine used to work in a prison. Like, we have come through and out the other side. So both of us are very like, hey, you need this shadow work. You have programming you need to deconstruct, and you have damage and trauma that needs to be addressed.
Yes.
And especially if you have turned that pain into aggression, which both of us did, there's
Yes.
additional work to do to take those pieces apart.
Of
You know,
course.
like
Yes.
it's absolutely vital work, and it's vital within witchcraft. If you want your magic to be effective, you need to be fully present in it, which includes your light and your shadow. So
Oh my God. I mean, that was one thing that, like, in your book, that playtime, because play is such an important concept to me philosophically, just that, like, spiritually. I think that you really connect with the universe when you play. And again, once you've reconciled with that dark side, that becomes more of a trickster. And that, like, that's goading you forward. And that is like real fun energy to work with, you know? But like you said, you have to go through it. And when you're
yes.
at the front end of that, you're just like, oh, I can't. And like, I've been through some things where I just got thrown into it and I had to claw my way out. So I can understand and empathize with people who are like, oh, I don't want to touch that. But like, if you don't, it metastasizes into these really toxic things, toxic beliefs. You get involved in toxic communities. You start thinking that like, oh yeah, fascism is the way to go. It's like,
Yeah, that's fine. It's totally okay.
yeah, I know. It's like, no, friends, anything that like limits, again, the play and the human potential is just bad. I think we can just say that that's categorically bad.
I think this is one of the things I love about Caine's form of spirit work, because Caine is so experiential and so play oriented. I love that one of the very first exercises that Caine introduces, and I'll let him talk about it, is basically like, here, you're going to connect with something, and then we're going to turn you loose outside, and I just want you to just go play, go do things.
So good.
Yeah, that's the genus loci exercise, right? That's the one you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, it's just, first of all, I feel like it's just so deeply important for all of us and all people who suffer a little, even just a tiny bit, which 99% of us do, have a little bit of narcissism going on. And that's ego, right? Like, we talk about, you'll hear that word in like a billion different like new agey kind of like self-help ego classes. I really wanted everybody to have the opportunity to connect with something outside of themselves, right? Because one of the things that did it for me, that like sold me on my path, was the realization I was in the middle of my life was on fire when I discovered my past, right? So I was in the midst of a divorce. My entire world was that was a nice house that my ex and I had built together. Nice house, nice cars, nice things, a son, like all of that. Everything was reduced down to all of the shit that I owned fit next to me on the bed that I was sleeping on in my sister's spare room. And the thing that really like sold me on my path was, it didn't matter if there was any person else in my world, in my life. I could go out into nature and still feel connected to something. And no one ever has to feel or be alone.
Yeah.
No matter where you are, no matter what's going on in life. So that exercise of connecting to the genus loci that I mentioned that Irene was talking about is literally learning how to open yourself up to and connect with sort of the overseer of a patch of nature. And in that connection, like, there are few things that can hold your vulnerability better than like a tree, right? If there is anything that is good to just lean against and sob until you feel like you're gonna break your back, like a tree is gonna be one of the best things. And that exercise is just was so like deeply enriching for me and so important for me. And I literally, like, it was like a switch was flipped. I was sitting in the woods and I just felt it. I felt what all was around me, who all was around me, right? The trees, the birds, you know, the earth I was sitting on, Mama Gaia. And I just cried and just cried and cried because I realized that, like, despite the fact that, like, I was the little dog in the "this is fine" meme with my whole world just burning, like, I wasn't alone, and I didn't have to feel like I was alone. And that's something that pain can really do to people. And how many of us walk around in some form of chronic pain, whether it's physical or emotional, right? And getting the opportunity to know what it is to be connected is just, like, in my opinion, the first step to putting out the fires and reclaiming a little bit of normalcy in your life.
Well, and I think one of my favorite things about that exercise is, of course, we bring everybody through things with guided meditation and cues. And then at the end, there's like when we teach this class in person, like, okay, go play. And then we ring a bell to bring everybody back about a half an hour later. And what I love is there's this moment of everybody like, I don't know how to do that. You know, and then a half an hour later, we're really lucky. We teach Blackfeather in person at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Frederick. It's a UU congregation on 7 acres in the country. There's a lot of land, right? We got beehives, willow trees, there's a stream on the property. It's magnificent. So what's great is, you know, you ring the bell half an hour later and everybody comes back looking 10 years younger because their inner children have come out and been able to feel safe for a little while. And they've reconnected to exactly what Caine was talking about, like this wholeness that is separate from what you own and all the labels you've placed on yourself. You know, this is the real power of magic, right? It allows the unfucking to begin.
Yes, the unfucking.
Yes.
Because that, again, there's so many layers to this too, because like one of it is obviously capitalism, where we're all taught to be alienated from our own bodies and our own feelings in order to consume and produce and to acquire, and then and that is held up as this holy thing, and we're all walking around feeling empty and broken because we aren't connected to play anymore. We aren't connected to our emotions. We aren't connected to joy.
Well, that's because there's no value in those things
Right.
in capitalism.
Exactly.
Right?
You cannot monetize them.
That's exactly it. Yes. Yeah. There's no use value. You can't extract profit out of it. It is solely useful for you and valuable for you to do it. And also to your point about you know, a pain, and I think that's why I will talk about trauma and grief at the drop of a hat to anyone, because both of those things, and I use both terms pretty interchangeably, they're so isolating. And you think, oh, this happened to me, I'm the only one who's carrying this thing around. And then you start that conversation with people and they realize, like, oh, I'm not alone, right? Other people are aching in the same way or similar ways that I am. I don't have to carry this by myself. There's nothing heroic about holding this and not sharing this again with the earth, with another person, with like a sympathetic dog, you know, like you can communicate these things. Again, you have to create the space for that. Otherwise, again, you get Stepford wives who yeah.
No, the phrase that I always use is, there is no prize for being the most miserable. You win nothing. There's no, you don't get a prize for that. There's no, you don't get some sort of a shiny gold star. Instead, you just spend your life being a miserable asshole. And this is part of why we want, I think it's part of why in Blackfeather, one of the very first things we teach is a self-blessing, like to start the process of undoing some of the damage. It doesn't happen overnight, right? You know, I've been in and out of therapy 3 times over the course of my adult life. This is a long ongoing process, but we can begin to shave off the edges. It's part of why we work with the archetype of the empowered witch self. What would you look like on the other side of that trauma? What would you look like if it didn't slow you down, if you were fully integrated? And so just by introducing these concepts to our students, we end up with people who are more whole on the other side, who are willing to maybe look in the places they weren't before because they finally feel safe to do so, who are, you know, I can't tell you how many students of ours have been like uncomfortable with the part where they have to look into a mirror at their own face and feel, we go for love, but let's go for acceptance or maybe indifference if love is not available, you know. But even that process, I've had people like, no, I'm not, can I use something else than the mirror? I'm like, it needs to have a reflective surface. I need you to see your own face. Like, but it's a scary thing to suddenly begin really shifting into being present with yourself. I think so many of us are just like anesthetizing the pain away. And Blackfeather calls you to actually be present with you, your spirit, your whole self, you know?
Yes.
And one of the coolest parts about everything that Irene just described, it was watching everybody go through that throughout that first year. And then at the end of the year, doing our closing ritual, seeing how many people literally even changed their name by the end of the year, myself included. I'm in the middle of I'm one of like fucking 20 people that I know that are in the middle of all changing our names legally right now, because like everybody has had that opportunity to really like see and seize upon like who we could be beyond everything that we've been through. And it was so incredible to watch that transition of our students throughout the year, of having that like that beginning of being like, oh no, to at the end of the year, you know, myself included, walking up to the mirror at
we
the
use a
closing
giant
ritual,
mirror at the closing ritual,
and putting our hands on the table and looking into the mirror and calling out, I am Caine. And you know, and everybody is just like has completely re-embraced themselves, and it was an incredible process to be a part of.
Yeah, and then we stacked a pandemic on top of it, so everyone had to even longer to sit with all of the things that they were learning about themselves. So now, yeah, Caine's right. Half our community is legally changing its name right now. I'm here for it. Like,
100% here for it too. You know, sometimes the dark night of the soul is a night. Sometimes it's 2.5 years in a pandemic. You're gonna probably shake things up if you're really paying attention to your pain and your trauma.
Shit. I suspect also I know from my spouse who went through a big transition process over all of that some of it was also just being away from their family. Like the pandemic freed everyone from those connection points. Like, who are you when you're by yourself? Is that the same person, the same face that you're showing others? And then there's that entire other metaphysical layer to go along with it. So yeah, everybody's been through a lot lately.
And that's something I loved about the book too, where it's just, you know, when you talked about like falling off the horse, you know, it's kind of like, okay, or the wagon, like you meet yourself where you are. Like, are you going to punish yourself for not doing a daily practice every day? Who does that benefit, right? Like so much of my upbringing, being raised by, you know, my grandparents were Polish Catholics, my mom is evangelical, and again, I was kind of raised with some evangelicalism, but mostly nothing, but a whole bunch of shame from all of them, because that's
right.
You know, Polish immigrants. That could be a whole hour of me talking about Polish shame. But like, to unlearn that, it's like, who does this benefit if I am beating myself up, if I'm hurting myself and not giving myself grace in the world? Because we're all going through a lot right now. If you can't maintain a daily practice, or if all you can do is like a little prayer, whatever, like, again, have grace with where you are right now and honor that it is sometimes just enough to get through the day when the days, especially when they're stacking up, like another difficult day, another difficult day, another day in the pandemic. Oh, monkeypox, cool, another pandemic.
Right.
Sweet.
Right.
Half the West's on fire. Awesome.
Yes, exactly. Like, oh, cool,
Yeah.
Europe's on fire now too.
Great.
Great.
Yep.
Exactly. Like, we're not built to handle all of this information
No,
and like
not.
all of this destruction. And so,
Well, I think that like that's really early in the book as well. Is like, look, you have chosen a path of deep connection. Obviously, it's calling to you, and we are all existing in this timeline at the same time.
yes.
So yes, when you fall off the wagon with your practice, please, for the love of all that's holy, don't beat yourself up. We also have science now that tells us that positive reinforcement works better than punishment. You know, make your climbing back on the wagon awesome. Like I teach an entire class on sustainable spiritual practices, much of which got into the book.
Yes.
But like, one of my favorite things is like, bribe yourself to go to the altar, buy the most expensive chocolates that you can, put a box of them on the altar. Every day you do your practice, eat a fucking chocolate. Like whatever it takes to get you there. Positive reinforcement is better. You know, build rewards into your calendar. So if your goal is, okay, 3 practices a week, I'm going to get in front of my altar, I'm going to light incense, and I'm going to do something 3 times this week. Great. You do that 2 weeks in a row, and then you set in your calendar a reminder that if you've done these 6 practices, you're going to your favorite fucking donut shop. Like, build in positive reinforcement. This is far more effective. We get beat up enough. Most of us are, all of us really, are carrying pieces of the body shame profit complex inside of us. We carry toxins that we've been cooked in. You don't need to add to that. You know, witchcraft is about healing. Most of us get into this because we're trying to help, whether it's ourselves or other people. So,
Yes.
you know, physician, heal thyself. Witches, enchant yourself first. You have to be part of your own healing work. You have to, you know?
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I've had this conversation before about the inner alchemy of magic,
Yes.
right? Like it primarily, it should be about, again, like you said, healing yourself, reconciling with yourself, coming back into yourself, and defiantly affirming yourself in a world that is trying to get you to be everything else but who you truly are. Like,
Yes.
so then it's not just like a good, like a personal practice. It is a radical political act also to say, no, I don't care what you tell me about who I am and what I should be. I know, I trust me and what my body is telling me over whatever profit margins you're trying to get me to be a part of.
You know what one of the most common spiritual ailments that I see that I fix on clients, in my opinion, and Irene, I'll be surprised if you haven't seen this as well. For me, the most common spiritual thing that I find are man-made energetic installations around the throat chakra, from where somebody else, a mom, a dad, a grandpa, sister, whatever, was so shitty to people that they instilled all of the negative self-talk that people go through all day long with themselves. That is probably the most common thing that I find on people. It doesn't matter what they come to me for. They could come to me for ancestral trauma. They could come to me for all kinds of things. I'll find it on almost every person that hits my table.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an unfortunate part of our heritage. I think part of why ancestral remediation is one of the things that gets taught a little later in the Blackfeather system. And of course, books 2 and 3 are definitely on their way. Those classes have concluded at this point. We're actually starting year 4 coming up in September. We are carrying not only our own shadow work, but the shadow work of previous generations, right? This needs to be addressed, because a lot of how we pass shame down, like Caine was talking about, is through this almost done with love attempt to control the children in our lives, to shut them down. And I agree with Caine. One of the most common incursion I see, an incursion is an energetic construct that's on somebody. Both Caine and I work semi-professionally, me semi-professionally, Caine professionally as a spirit worker. I see bonds around wrists and ankles from being controlled, from being tried to slow down. That is the thing I see on everyone. Throat stuff as well, particularly in people who are born in and socialized in female bodies. This is usually a mess, just a mess, you know?
I mean, I'm not surprised. Like I got turned on to Louise Hay in my like mid-20s. And to Caine's point too, like I grew up with a lot of anger that I couldn't express. I was frustrated all the time by like the absolutely unhinged adults around me. And wouldn't you know it, I was constantly sinus infections, ear, nose, and throat. That was
Yep,
always,
all right
always,
here.
always. And then wouldn't you know it, as soon as I moved out and I went to college, all of that disappeared.
Amazing how that works, isn't it?
It's incredible. Yeah.
We have this crazy thing in Western culture where we have decided that the body and the mind and the spirit are separate things. It's part of why we teach the body system so early in Blackfeather. We're like, look, you have a physical body, a spiritual body, and an energetic body, and they interact with each other. They all sit in the same space. What impacts one impacts the others. So you've got to start dealing with the system as a whole. It's why we include sacred movement practice. Like, please get the fuck back into your body, begin moving energy around. Like, you need to access all three of these. One of the things that I love about, I also identify as Unitarian Universalist, of course. I'm a commissioned lay minister within my congregation. And one of the jokes about UUs is that they occupy their upper chakras too much and the lower ones almost not at all. The same is true of witches as a whole. We love to read about magic and have really long conversations, and we never get like below the heart. Like, it stops. It's like, please, I need y'all to get sacral and root real fast. Like, I just need that.
Oh boy, I am called out right now. I am called out. How dare you? And also, and I get it. And it's so when I used to run my own business, I made chainmail full time, and I also taught chainmail. Awesome. Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, we're all friends now, of course. Yeah. But I also taught chainmail, and I've been teaching for, oh my God, 15 years or something like that. And I love it because you put pliers in somebody's hands, you give them some jump rings, and usually by the end of the class, they have made a bracelet, a pair of earrings, a necklace, and the empowerment of just getting people back into their bodies and realizing that they can move tools and create change in the world. Again, so many things I look back on and I was like, oh, I was doing little witchy things for a really long time, because it's that, like, there is something so, again, sacred about the body, and get back into your body. Don't shame yourself. Don't hate the flesh. Like like this is
and don't dissociate from it. Like, this is part of you. Even if your body is one that causes dysphoria or other things, there are ways to occupy your flesh that are healthier and are able to support your practice more as you journey toward your fullest identity. Like, there are ways to be in your body that are healthier. It's just we're so separated from our bodies, and we're taught such awful things about our bodies. Go ahead.
And by teaching, by teaching people to make jewelry and things like that, we're jumping right back into what Irene was just talking about with people not occupying their lower chakras. That's sacral chakra, baby. That's way down low, and that is another huge art. Expressing yourself through art and creativity is another huge and deeply necessary and needed part of this experience that people are just missing out on. They spend all day long grinding through their day in their cubicle or in front of their cash register or whatever it is that they're doing, and then they go home and they scroll for a while they're eating at the same time, and then they go lay down in bed, and that's their day. And nowhere throughout there has there been an opportunity to express themselves creatively. And we're taking it out of our fucking schools now. We're not even letting children have art in their schools anymore. So teaching a class like that, I'm not surprised at all that you saw people feel so empowered, because that was probably the first time in months, days, or years that they've ever created something.
Years. Yes. I had one student, this is very early on in my teaching career, and I will remember it for the rest of my life, because she was making something and she said, all day I sit in front of a computer and I answer emails, and I just sit in an office, and she just looked me right in the eyes, and she's like, "This is not how we're meant to live."
That's right.
That's right. Oh, I just saw a real thing right there.
Yes, that got very deep very fast.
Yeah, which again,
Well, and
I'm
the other
cool
thing
with,
that,
but
like,
You
I
just
try
watched
to-
somebody break away from the Matrix right
Yeah,
there.
yes,
They were just
absolutely.
unplugged.
Well, and one other thing that I think we have this weird thing in our culture with everything you have that you do or create has to be like monetizable. And one of my favorite things to tell people is like, art doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to, you don't have to be able to sell it, just make something. I love drum circles. Caine and I are both in a band called Kindred Crow. We end every show with a drum circle. We tell our people in the audience to bring drums, like participate in the creative process. You'll feel better on the other side, and you don't have to be good. Like, that's not a thing that's needed here.
Exactly. Again, when people tell me that they're not creative, I have people come into my classes sometimes. They're like, "I'm not creative." I'm like, that's impossible. That is actually impossible.
You may have had it smashed out of you by our culture or your parents, but you're definitely creative. That is a natural human trait. That's part of what it is to be in these bodies.
Exactly that. And again, what you're saying about like, okay, so all of this gets relegated to, is this monetizable, right? Or is this good? Is this something that a critic would say is worthy of value? It's like, none of that matters. Creativity is like, oh, I got an idea. Oh, I'm going to throw this extra spice into dinner. Oh, I'm going to write with chalk, or even like signing your name with a little extra flourish. That's creativity.
Yeah.
So don't say you're not creative. It is you can't help it. It is infused in your being.
Absolutely. We've been painting on the cave walls for tens of thousands of years. It is natural to humans to want to make art, to make something beautiful, and to just express ourselves in nonverbal and nonlinear ways. We have different selves that try to speak, going back to sort of like the upper versus lower chakras. Our brains are very verbal, but that's not all of the expression that we have. And so when we're going with music or creating jewelry or creating something involving paint, you're allowing that sort of less verbal self to have a say in what's going on. Absolutely important.
I would even be willing to say that creative problem solving is still being creative, right?
Yes.
Not even necessary. You don't even necessarily have to create art, but just letting yourself think outside of the box for things, and that's 100% one of the reasons why creativity is one of my 4 C's in that I write about in the book. Right? You have to be able to see the forest for the trees that someone else is stuck in, and then come up with new and inventive ways to help guide them out.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I think, talking about spirit work, I think any kind of, again, that to me is the real alchemy, right? That's the real witchcraft, where you are using, again, you're using things that you have, you're reclaiming things that you're taught that, because we're all taught from a small age that we're not valuable, we're sinful, whatever words you want to use. It's like, you're bad, you're wrong. And instead you're saying like, no, actually, I can come up with really creative ideas. I mean, again, we're wired to work together for survival. So of course, if it's going to be something that is outside of survival, your brain is still going to operate that way too. It's like, again, that's why brainstorming sessions, especially with people that you can actually like connect with and not like terrible ones at work, but like, like it's again, you're creating something bigger than all of you because you care, you want to help. Your subconscious is firing, right? It is pulling things out of you that you can't consciously think of, or when you leave a meeting and you end up calling your friend like an hour later, like, I just thought about this. Like, that's creativity. Like you said, that is all part of this human process.
Well, and I think it's a very necessary part of, as Caine was saying, spirit work, but also just straight up magic. You need to be able to visualize an outcome. You need to be able to see the world in a different way than it's being presented to you. And most people in Western society have had their creativity and imagination crushed out of them. I remember being 7 years old and being completely lost in my world of dinosaurs and dragons and princesses and fire and shit while I was running around the yard with a stick as a sword. Like, that level of imaginative immersement is what is actually necessary for really good journey work. You need that skill set again.
Yes.
We can, one of the great things about many magical systems, Blackfeather included, is that we start easing you back into the process of imagining shit. Like, but most of us we've had that capability mushed at some point in time. Even if we were lucky enough, like I was raised by hippies, it is a great blessing in my life. I was never crushed by them. But I am in a female body in Western culture, which means I have been crushed, not by my parents, but I had those pieces shaved off and whittled down and smushed. So I had to relearn how to imagine at that scale. Caine and I talk about it with our students a lot, especially ones who begin journey work, like, I can't really see things. I'm sort of aware of where stuff is. Like, yes, absolutely. This is a muscle that has to be strengthened. You're going to start with, you go to a journey and you're journeying to an apple grove. You'll know where the trees are. That's step one. After time passes and you practice, you'll be able to see the apples. It takes time. It takes repetition and allowing imagination to begin to strengthen again. And quite frankly, for me, imagination is the gateway to the divine. It is the gateway to magic. You need this skill set, and it's one that got eroded. So, a lot of Blackfeather work is rebuilding systems that all humans come with, but we've had extricated by capitalism, among other things.
Exactly.
So back in. Like, let's realign.
I love it. Exactly. Because again, it's reclaiming these things that like you said, that whittling away, right? That is so evocative to me. And again, also feeling that really hard. And again, expectation.
There's some stuff going on right now.
I'm not happy about it.
No, and it's breaking away. It's also breaking away from the construct, right? What that student in your class was like, this is not how we're meant to live. Like that's 100%. We're not, not at all. And part of training new witches is getting people to break away from the construct, break away from all of these preconceived notions that were put there by a bunch of old white slave owners like 250 years ago. Like, fuck those guys. They have
directly into the sun.
Seriously. They have absolutely no business being a part of what we were actually meant to be as humans.
Right.
These are the same people who wrote that all men are created equal while having slaves in their house. And that's what this country was built on. That's what the construct is built around. It's all just smoke and fucking mirrors. And when you get people away from that, then miraculously they become happier, healthier, they become more productive, and they are able to feel more empowered and take their own path in their life to heights that they never ever would have imagined getting to.
That's part of why elemental life sculpting is a big part of magpie training, because a lot of that is about going, hey, actually, who are you? Like, really, what is your natural alignment? What do you actually need? What is home? What does it look like? What does it feel like? How do you source your passion? How do you want to feel it? Are you a community person? Do you need a romantic relationship? Are you more oriented toward friendships? Know this about yourself and then begin to draw your life into alignment. So many people, I think, especially at least in the United States where Caine and I live, in their 30s and 40s have a wake up moment where they go, oh my God, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I have checked all the boxes and I'm still miserable.
Yes.
And so then we have to look at what your true north is, because if you've been pursuing someone else's north, you're going to be unhappy. That's not your alignment. So we need to figure out what it is. Most people don't know. I can't tell you how many clients I've had where, well, what do you want? I don't know. Because we do not allow that level of introspection. And it's part of why it's such a big part of Blackfeather. And so we introduce elemental life sculpting, and then it's part of the homework for about 4 months. Like, it takes a long time to answer these questions about the self. But once we do, then we actually know who we are, and we can start to actually build a life that works, even if it means blowing up a couple bridges along the way.
and in addition to the life sculpting, the piece I that I bring to the table that's important for me, in my opinion, is the primal aspect.
Yes.
It's the not just getting reacquainted with and reconnected to the nature outside, but to the nature inside, and to the actual, like, rolling around naked in the dirt, shitting in the woods animal that we were meant to be, and not this like caged creature that constantly lives in a concrete box 24 hours a day. And again, just, you know, relearning what and who we are, and what and who we are not meant to be like running on a treadmill powering like the construct. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. But that, again, that takes work. It's good that you have a whole course and a multi-year course about this, because it takes a lot of work. Like I always get a little scared when I talk to people who don't know what they want, because it's so jarring to me. Because again, as unhinged as my family was, they gave me a lot of freedom to be creative. And I think the creativity is that, like, knowing what you want, because even if I'm doing something I want, I'm thinking of at least 3 other things that I want to be doing and will do next. And part of that is probably a big part of that is the ADHD, but like it's just like desire. And it's like, and to decouple desire from like all of, again, the sinful, like evil sensibility. It's like, no, we're just like libidinal creatures, you know, not necessarily.
Hi, we're bonobos.
Exactly. And you can even decouple, like I'm a huge fan of Herbert Marcuse and this idea of like the eros and reclaiming eros. And like eros doesn't have to be sexual. It can be. It's sensual. What are you in your body? Do you want to feel something? Do you want to go outside? Again, I got like a plant like right here. So I'm just like all my plants, you know, it's like reconnecting with something, breathing the air, being out in the sun. Like those are erotic pleasures. Those are sensual pleasures. And it's just, again, regrounding yourself in your body and realizing that it is a site of joy, and it doesn't have to be a site of shame and evil.
No, I think one of the most profound experiences I had one time when I took psilocybin was realizing that my body is constantly sending me a wave of pleasure that I can't actually, I understand why my brain filters it out. It would be completely distracting if I was actually trying to like get anything done. But that was a profound moment for me, because I realized that being alive feels good. And we forget that. We get so dissociated that we almost lose the fact that we have this brief moment to be these sensual creatures. Like that particular experience also explained to me why spirits do like to possess us, why the gods love coming into human bodies, why transpossessory is a thing. This feels amazing. We have this incredible sensory capability for sensual touch, for pleasure, for pain, for all of these amazing sensations. And when we're talking about a being that is extremely adept on the energetic and spiritual realm, but is not incarnate in a body, I get why they want to feel this sometimes. Like that particular, you know, I love psilocybin because it removes the veil, right? That removing of the veil was so instructive to me, and being like, this is why that happens. And I need to remember, we are so much pleasure and we ignore it and we suppress it. You know, allowing that is absolutely vital. I mean, it goes way back to early Wicca with all acts of love and pleasure on my rituals. Those hippies, they were right. Did you know?
Thank you. Right. They were onto something.
They were wrong about a lot of other things, but that part was correct. Yeah, we're not going to take apart the patriarchy. Another episode.
I'll put it on the schedule. Exactly. I'm already looking forward to it.
Our feelings about early witchcraft.
Oh boy.
I think that was actually another big thing that Caine and I really wanted to present with Blackfeather Mystery School, is a lot of the books that are available are still very oriented toward gender binary. Like there's a lot of very subtle but potent and present heteronormativity. There's a lot of subtle but potent and present patriarchy. And so offering up a magical system that you know, Blackfeather doesn't teach you what to believe. It gives you a safe structure in which to practice. Presenting that in a way that is not hooked to these harmful systems was really important for us, because a lot of the books on the market are still very much like God, goddess, male, female. This herb is masculine. Like, that's a fucking plant. And unless it has a stamen, it's not male. That's just leaves. Could you fucking stop with this? Like, do you see a vagina on the fern? No, it's not female. Like,
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you.
no,
Especially with all
witchcraft has a gender binary problem, and it makes me insane. Like, what are you doing?
It is so wild to me. It's like, okay, so we're gonna deconstruct so many things, but you're just gonna accept.
We're just gonna leave that.
Yeah,
that part we're gonna keep.
Oh yeah, this is cool. We want this. Like,
Well,
really?
in a practice that is inherently liminal, like, this is a magical system. It is both and. It is gray area. It is not even continuum. It is constellation. You know, we are a whole bunch of different points floating in space. And if you want to bring the power of opposing forces together, you have so many other options. Why choose that? Like,
and
this
not
is part
just
of why Enfys and I are friends.
Really, I like
and
it.
not just inherently liminal, but like the entire point of magic is to break the norm.
Yes.
Right? You are actively trying to warp reality with magic. Why the fuck would you use all of the binaries to do that?
That's it. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And also it's like, again, the act of doing magic, you're saying that there is a power within you that is greater than, again, all these social expectations, that you
Right.
can connect with something else. So again, why would you accept everything that society hands you wholesale and just keep reinforcing it?
Yeah.
Like again, these are the reasons people seek out magic, because society is repressive and
Yes.
dark. Like the reality is so much more fluid, again, liminal. Like there is so much else to explore out there.
Absolutely.
Maybe push back against the whole like divine masculine and divine feminine binary.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Unlike our country, which is a two-party system, magic is not a two-party system.
Yeah.
It is not a binary blue or red thing. And the only way that you can create a new world, a new reality, is to imagine something, to create something outside of those boxes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And getting back to this idea of visualization and again of exploration beyond what is just handed to you. Like, that's the power to say, like, hey, we can do something else. And you start personally, right? You start with self-love, you start with a self-blessing, and you can inspire others, hopefully, too. Again,
Yes.
when I was running my business full-time, especially when I first started it, and I was able to just do that and make chainmail, anybody came to me with any ideas, I'm thinking about doing this. And I'm like, cool, let's sit down. I'll talk you through all like different steps that you can take to do it. Because all I wanted to do was share this state of experience with everybody around me. It's like, oh, I love you. I want you to be happy too. I want you to be affirmed in the things that you want and your creativity and your passion, because those have value, those have meaning. Again, it's to exist outside of all these social structures that are just trying to keep us small, keep us good little workers, so they can have
keep
profit.
us consuming things to support the economy. No, I love witchcraft because it is a form of claiming agency. When you have the feeling of not having power, that's what magic is for. You know, it allows us to push back against forces that on a practical level we can't always touch. You know, so then we turn to magic. You know, it's why magic has always been sort of the area of the poor, of the oppressed. That's where it comes from and why it exists, because sometimes you can't use the systems that are part of, you know, everyday business reality. So you need an alternative. Magic is the third path. And that's why it's so important to learn, especially now when the world desperately needs more witches, you know. Caine and I are not subtly trying to train an army. So I just want more empowered, centered, aligned witches in the world, because I know what we can do.
Well, and also again in Blackfeather, like when you were talking about like reducing self-sabotage, like that resonated so hard with me, because again, so much of our upbringing, so much of society, like I said, I keep repeating myself, but it's like it's telling you that who you are is wrong, and so you internalize all of that, and so it's breaking that in order to say like, no, I deserve good things. Why shouldn't I be happy? Again, why shouldn't I enjoy my body? Why shouldn't I enjoy the way that I operate in the world? Like, why? Like those are just important questions to ask. Like, even if you're not doing witchcraft, but like, okay, how can you get back into yourself?
Absolutely.
That breaking away from self-sabotage is so fucking potent that it was that little bit of getting away from self-sabotage that got me to a point where I believed that I deserved to pursue a career that I would have actually been happy in. How many people are miserable in their lives right now purely because they believe that the only thing that they deserve is what they're doing right then and there.
Yeah.
Right.
Even if it's paying their bills, even if they have nice health insurance and you know, a nice car and a nice house and things like that. How many people are miserable because they're not doing what they actually want to be doing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and just purely on like a raw magic level, when you're self-sabotaging, we'll use like the apples, you know, algebra equation, you have 10 apples to spend, you know. So if you throw 10 apples at a problem, but then part of you is pulling 3 of them away, are you hitting as hard as you can? No.
Right.
When you tear yourself down, you tear down your magic as well.
Yes.
So beginning to end the war within, I think, is one of the most important things any witch can do. And again, it takes time, you know, like shifting into an alignment and into a life that is more aligned to you and to your magic takes time. You know, we live in a late stage failed capitalist hellscape, which means that not everybody can take the step to, you know, to immediately move into a new career. Not everyone has that ability, but we can begin making subtle changes that allow us to move in that direction. We can be, I like the phrase of like, we can be 10% less miserable and it's worthwhile. 10% happier is great. Like,
yes, exactly.
We can be 10% more aligned. We can get started.
Just to, and again, it's just to get started, because it's again, that's what I loved about what you had written. It's again, okay, where are you now? Right?
Yeah.
How can you be met now? Because, and also understanding, I mean, I always talk about like, if you want to reprogram your programming, it takes a lot of work to reprogram those neural pathways, and it takes a lot of reinforcement. It takes practice. You have to focus on, okay, this is not the narrative I want to have for myself anymore. This is not the narrative I want to have about my career, whatever it is. And reprogramming, resetting it, that can only happen with time. You have to get your reps in.
Yes. I mean, we talk about that. I think it's chapter 8 is the empowered witchcraft chapter. And it's basically like, look, this is going to take a while, but I want you to watch yourself, like your self-talk for a week. I want you to write down the terrible things you tell yourself. And then you're going to write a counter statement. And for the next 6 months to a year, when you hear that self-harming phrase, you're going to say this back to it. It takes time. You know, we had there's that sort of misunderstanding of science thing that, you know, that it takes 21 days to make a new neural pathway, and that's highly variable. But what I will say is that practice doesn't make perfect, but it tends to make permanent. And this is the way we edit the brain, is through practice and repetition, and eventually it does stick. You know, I can speak from experience that I don't tell me the shitty things anymore. I have some new ones I found, and I'm going to keep working on those. But like the same stuff that made me miserable when I was in my 20s and my 30s, those are not those things have been resolved because
Yes.
I've worked on them for a very long time.
Yes.
So this is, you know, this is worthwhile work. Really, everybody, y'all can be happier. Like you can feel more centered, you can feel more powerful, you can feel more empowered. This is an option, but there is no substitute for work. That's the only thing within witchcraft that I don't have the magic bullet. You know, you read the book, if you don't do the exercises and you just read it as an intellectual exercise, I hope you enjoy the journey, but without actually putting the work in it, we can't fix it from here.
Yeah.
You know, you are the witch you've been waiting for.
That,
you are.
That exactly. You have to take the steps, because just the very action of deciding that you want to live a better life, you're going to have a better
Yes.
life. I firmly believe that. Like, again, like I mentioned, grew up with very unhappy Polish immigrants, doom and gloom. You survive World War II, of course, you're going to have some.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, this is
Yeah.
a lot of trauma.
Oh my God. We could do yet another episode on epigenetic trauma, you know, like spiritually and genetically. And I just decided, I'm like, I am going to just believe that good things are possible. Not even that they would happen, just that they were possible. And then good things started happening. And again, it could have been the same amount of good things to bad things that was happening before, but I only focused on the good ones and recalibrated essentially my spiritual resonance. So
Yes.
that's what I would reach out to, that's what I would attract, and that's what I would seek. Completely changed my life.
No, I don't want to like The Secret, everybody. Like this
Yeah.
is, you know, like maybe I manifested it. Maybe it's white privilege. Like,
Can you just put out a book of quotes, by the way? You are very quotable.
Thank you. So I worked in journalism. I learned to make my thoughts sort of short and clever. I was a radio host for a long time, so that's my cheat code.
So many zings.
But
I'm just like,
you know, one of the things that is true though is that you find what you seek. You know, what you are looking for is the thing you find.
Yes.
Some people, I think, really, and through usually no fault of their own, many times they're raised by traumatized people, we learn maladaptive coping mechanisms, and we tend to seek pain. We seek chaos and panic and disorder. We seek the things that are comfortable for us. If you grow up in a fucked up environment, you seek fucked up things. This is part of why everyone needs to go to therapy, right? Because many of us come from some variety of fucked up. So all of that to the side, when you begin to seek connectedness, when you seek transcendental experiences, when you seek connection of various sorts, when you seek magic, you tend to find that as well because you're looking for it, you know? It isn't The Secret, and it isn't like magical manifestation. It's just choosing what you are cultivating. You know, that which is fed increases. It's choosing what you grow.
yes.
It's a little bit like what you do with trauma and pain. I don't believe the thing that like bad things happen for a reason. I think that's bullshit. I think bad things happen. But I think we can choose to take pain and find a lesson in it and find the gold in it and create meaning and wisdom from it. I believe that that is possible. It's what I've done with my pain. You know, I had an abusive marriage. I come from a fucked up place. Caine had a real fucked up childhood. Both of us have a lot of trauma in our backgrounds, but both of us have chosen to take that pain and make it healing.
Yes.
This is an option, you know, and again, it's, we find what we're looking for. Caine and I went looking for healing and we found it. That's what's important. And that's the power of magic.
That's it. That's it. And again, affirming that self and saying like, no, I can make these choices. I can make these changes. I can engage the world in a new way. And hey, you found it, right? Again, you're dedicated, you're doing the work, you're making it happen. And you, again, that alchemy in your own life, you can't not succeed if you're honest and earnest and just keep putting the reps in. You have to, like, you're not special. It's the process. You will find
right, exactly. This is just how it fucking works, kids.
That's how it works. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, okay. So why don't we talk a little bit about Blackfeather Mystery School specifically? I mean, we've hinted at it this entire time.
Sure.
Like, again, I know this is in your book, but for people who are unfamiliar, how did this develop? Where did this come from?
So Blackfeather Mystery School originally came out of a mystical experience. There is a form of divination called Sather that heathens practice. And in that form of divination, different seers will sit and channel or embody a particular power. And within heathenry, there are figures called the Norns. They're a little bit like the Greek fates, so past, present, and future. And I asked the seer, who was channeling the future Norn, what I should do to care for my pagan community. I'm a community servant. And what that Norn said was, teach, make them like you. And so I spent a year thinking about what that meant and talking it over with my crow brother, Caine. And Caine had made some observations about sort of the availability of decent teaching within the witchcraft world, that we would talk about. Like,
There
both
isn't
of us,
any.
like, there is. So we're gonna soften that. There are some very good teachers in this world. There's also, just quite frankly, some real bad, harmful shit out there.
Absolutely. Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And when I started fleshing out the idea of Blackfeather as a school, as a teaching system, it really sort of landed all at once as, you know, a book and a class series and retreats and an entire world to make it as accessible as possible. I knew that I wanted to teach spirit work at the same time, because that's a very vital part of my practice. But I cross-trained into spirit work late, which means I went from advanced witchcraft to advanced spirit work, which you can do if you're a very good witch. And I was, and I am.
Yeah.
But I don't know beginning spirit work. So I was like, hey, Caine, hey, buddy, save me.
Perfect.
So Caine came on board.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I was to be fair, I was speaking more about locally when I was grumping about how there was no really available, great, widely available resources for new people who wanted to get involved, and it was really upsetting because not only were there just not very many good teachers around, but there were so many bad ones that it had started to just churn out this like swath of dangerous practitioners
and damaged practitioners.
Yeah, and I started doing the math in my head around one in particular. There was a Reiki instructor who was teaching people to draw in the darkness from their client into their own body and then channel it out.
That's the face I made too.
Right, right. And I started thinking about, like, okay, so first of all, they had to learn that from somewhere.
Right.
And they themselves were a very successful trainer, who regularly hosted workshops with like 8 or 10 students, and were just churning out like dozens of at a time of healers who are out there basically committing spiritual suicide.
Right.
And it absolutely just, I was like beside myself with anger, really, and shock. And I started looking around trying to find, like, well, who all is out there? Well, not very many people.
Yeah.
And that's really unfortunate, especially when, like, magic is supposed to be about healing, and now we also have this group of witches and healers and things out there that are just fucking things up more because of the way they were trained.
Yeah.
So I absolutely, like, this. As soon as Irene brought the concept up to me, I was just like, oh, I have feelings. I have feelings about this. We're doing this.
So that's where the Blackfeather system comes from. It is the magical school I wish I'd been in. Witches can only ever really teach what they know. So Blackfeather, of course, is witchcraft according to Irene Glasse and Caine Dreamwalker. This is our version of how this works. And it is specifically, like, when I first started teaching within witchcraft, I taught out of the tradition that I came from, and I was teaching material that I had been taught, right? We all, in the very beginning, we repeat the information that we have. So Blackfeather is, all right, if I was going to come here deliberately, Like if I was going to become this kind of a practitioner, the one that I am, and do it on purpose, what order would the skills be taught in? You know, how would I do it deliberately? Because it took me 20 years to get here through all sorts of meandering, running into different, you know, books and training systems, teachers. And I've had the benefit of studying with some really wonderful witches and being able to adapt to what they, you know, so I've taken this long winding path. What if we condensed it? What if I did it deliberately? You know, what if Caine made a direct path to be the kind of practitioner that he is? And that's where Blackfeather comes from. So it is like, if we were going to do this on purpose, how would we do it? And we think we can do it in 4 years, basically.
With a little bit less trauma than what we
less trauma, like
less,
fewer mistakes. This is part of why we teach so much protection magic and like
and consent
and safe practices. And one of the very first chapters is about the powers that be. And you can tell a god no. Please, for the love of all that's holy, if you're feeling like your consent is being violated, tell them to fuck off. Like all sorts of things that help support safe mystical experiences. You know, one of the biggest things I've seen within my own sort of community leadership and ritual work over the last several years, both pre and post pandemic, is that more people who are not trained in any way are having mystical experiences with deities. My personal feeling is that there are some deities right now that are very active, that are they're actively recruiting, basically. And we need to be in a position of strength when we are talking to something that is a higher class of energetic or spiritual being. We still need to be very much in our strength. And so this is part of why in the very beginning of Blackfeather, Caine and I put like all of the bumper car, like wrap around everybody, like, all right, look, so I did this wrong.
Very.
Really wrong. Here's how you do it the right way. So that you don't have to have the experience that I did.
Right. Yeah, you do a couple spells that blow up your life and you're like, cool, how do I tell everyone not to do it this way?
Well, it's not just that. Like, I think that living in a society that's puritanical in on its foundation, and I would say probably like 80 or more % of the pagans that I do know were all at one point in time some flavor of Christianity. So it's very easy for everybody to kind of get it into their head that if a god reaches out to you, that you don't get to say no, because that's what we've been taught our whole lives, that you know, God is the answer, and whatever God says goes, and then even if you break away from that a little bit and you're like trying to and you're like getting away from all of that, then
the habit of obedience
is still there. And then also the idea of like, oh, this God has chosen me.
Right.
I should be like so thankful that now I get to like serve this other god, and maybe they'll help me, and no, damn it, like there are so many of them. Like, don't
and it's that thing where we need to step away from Christianity, where the gods are not omnipotent, they are not all powerful, they're not all knowing. Most of them have something they're trying to do. Sometimes that aligns with your well-being, sometimes, kids, it fucking doesn't. So knowing that is very important. But we're cooked in a Christian stew largely in Western culture, and so stepping away from Christian supremacy it's a long process. And we, you know, again, Caine and I want everyone to practice witchcraft safely. So, you know, can we get to here without the horrific mistakes some of us have made? And by some of us, I mean the two teachers sitting with you right now. Like, it's why we start with like apotropaics and protection magic. It's so early. It's like we teach shielding and like fairly intense shielding fairly early. Just, you know, like, all right, we're gonna learn safe hex first. Fire, thorns, rocket launchers, whatever you need that to look like, kids, make it happen.
Again, perfect, because as much as I say, like, again, are you a witch if you haven't blown up your own life? Like, if you can not do that, that'd be great. Like, Again,
I
to
think the
explore
one
your
tricky
path.
thing is sometimes it's necessary. Like,
Yeah.
and this I see with especially people who are, who are already adults coming into
Yeah.
witchcraft
Mhm.
or coming into a more profound relationship with magic. Sometimes you have to blow up your life. I used to be upset by the number of divorces that seemed to follow my classes. But now, of course, I'm a lot more comfortable with it, because when you start people on a path to empowerment and self-knowledge, things that don't fit start to chafe. Sometimes that's a marriage. And we need to get out of this idea that marriages are pass fail. They're not. These relationships that we are in are biological. They are like plants. They have different lifespans and they require different things in which to thrive. So let's say, we suddenly have a plant that needs more sun. It's not going to work in the position that it's in right now if it needs more sunlight. So we have to move the plant, which means taking it from where it was and putting it where there's sunlight.
Yes.
That is how relationships actually are. They have different lifespans and they require different things. And many times when someone starts aligning themselves, you're going to blow up your life. There are ways to do it safely, though. And again, we teach a lot of that in Blackfeather so that then you know where you're going. One of the things I love about life sculpting is that if you figure out who you actually are, if your life suddenly explodes, whether you initiated it or not, you've got a map to exactly where you want to be.
Oh, so
Most
good.
people don't have that,
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they're just kind of out on their own in the wilderness, hoping for the
Exactly.
best.
Yes. Yep. Just desperately trying to get by.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you know what you
Yeah.
actually need, what you want, what will make you happy, what feels good, what makes you thrive, you can orient yourself correctly after an explosion. And it's really important stuff.
Oh my God, yes. So if you want to let listeners know where they can find your work, where can they find you?
So Blackfeather Mystery School, the Magpie Training, the book, can be acquired on pretty much any major bookseller's page. So whether that's, bookshop.org or Barnes & Noble or Amazon. And we wanted to make the book multimedia. We do a lot of guided work in Blackfeather. And so if you go to blackfeathermystery.com, all of the meditations have been recorded. Caine and I are in a band. We have a recording studio. It's so much easier to do a guided meditation, listening to somebody else guide you through it, than it is to try to remember it or to open up your eyes and read the next part and then close your eyes and imagine that part. Go to blackfeathermystery.com. There's a bunch of extra tools right there. Information about upcoming courses will be there as well. We're about to get the information online for an online Magpie training to go along with the book that will be running starting in September for the next year. So there's a ton of information there. And it's really easy to find Caine and I online as well. So if you're on Facebook, there's a Blackfeather Mystery School page. My name is Irene Glasse. There are no others. So you'll be able to find me really easily as well. Just search me. I also write at Glasse with an E, witchcottage.com. I'm a weekly blogger. There's a lot of content up there. That site has been up for, since 2017. There are a lot of useful articles. I live, breathe, eat, sleep witchcraft. So if you're looking for information about something, the search function works really, really well. There's useful articles up there. Basically, come find us. and really get the book. Even if you are a practitioner already, Blackfeather fills in the gaps. All of us, especially those of us who took the eclectic path or who left our traditions and began adding on weird stuff because it's really fun, we have spaces where there are exciting opportunities for growth. Blackfeather is a very holistic and balanced system. I think even people who have established practices can find really useful material in there. And I'm telling you that because other people have said it to me. I got 20-year practitioners who are like, oh, wow, I hadn't actually learned this part. Yeah, no, that's a thing. It's totally a thing.
I can confirm from reading also. Yeah. Just oh, yeah, I should have been doing that the whole time.
Right, exactly. And we all experience that. So yes, pick up the book, come find us online. We're very easy to locate. And do magic, do lots of it. And unfuck yourself as well. Magic is therapy.
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening and or watching, depending on where you found this podcast. Find the book, take a class with Irene and Caine. Go to blackfeathermystery.com for that. I'm also going to post Irene's writing website. Like I said, just delightful human beings. So kind. Irene even checked on me because I told her I had COVID, and that's why the episode was delayed. I just, like, the two of them are very good people, and I want to see them thrive, and I want everybody to know how great they are. So find them, follow them, support them, learn to bless yourself every day. It really does make a difference. And I really hope that you have a playful and curious day.